fellow travelers, and welcome to the Traversing the Stars podcast. Today's special guest is Venus Ariel. You know her as Nico on DMZ, now on HBOMax. Now come join me as we go Traversing the Stars. Hello, Miss Ariel. Thank you so much for coming to the Traversing the Stars podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Definitely my pleasure. You're doing a fantastic job in DMZ. I've really enjoyed the show so far.
Thank you so much.
So a question I always like to start with is a question of inspiration. So when did you know you wanted to become an actor?
So I first started when I was 4 and I went in mostly, I think, in print. I started doing little jobs like Party City, Toys R Us, things like that. And then when I was about 6 or 7, I started auditioning for more film type things, commercial stuff. And then I landed my first movie when I was 7, which is Exposed with John Wick or Keanu Reeves.
Yeah.
And Ana de Armas. And that was a very eye-opening experience for me because I was 7 and it opened this gate for me that I knew I was capable to doing all these dramatic scenes. And I just didn't know I had it in me because as a 7-year-old, you don't see a lot of kids doing these things. And that's when I realized that I fell in love with the dramatic part of the industry. And I found my love for being on set and working on films and not only just commercials and just taking pictures. And especially with this role, since it was the first dramatic role that I got, it really hit hard because I personally, when I was filming it, I couldn't, my parents couldn't explain to me such things that I had done inside the movie because I was too young to understand it at that time. Because there are some scenes where in Exposed where I portray Ana de Armas and how she felt as a little girl being abused, being, struggling with sexual assault in her home at such a young age. And I had to interpret that at 7 years old without even knowing what I was doing. So, and as I grew up and I started to understand more what I had done, I was like, wow, that was heavy. But after that, I started auditioning a lot more for shows and for movies. And the next thing that I landed, commercial wise, I landed Ford, which kind of opened up my doors to California because Exposed was filmed in New York where I was born. And then when I was 9 or 10, we started looking in to move to California because of a Target commercial that I got. And my parents and my family just fell in love with the California weather. And we decided to stay here for about 7 to 8 months to see how it would be like, to see how the ranges would be with auditions, with jobs in general. And my opportunities just went through the roof. I had 5 auditions per week with commercials and everything. So we decided to pack it up and move over here. And that's when I landed Ford. And that was an international commercial. And it came out right when I'm not sure what soccer tournament it was, but it was one of those. So it really blew up. And then I auditioned for NCIS New Orleans. And that was a really fun experience too. Another dramatic one as well. I am the daughter of Hannah Corey. I'm Naomi Porter. And I love being on set. Like I mentioned before, it's so much fun, honestly, because you there's no limit to acting. You can have a million possibilities with whatever job you have. And then I auditioned for this one, DMZ. And frankly, it was my last audition before quarantine hit and my last in-person audition. And it was a self-tape at home. And it was, as soon as I got the script, I was like, damn, this is heavy. Because I go from NCIS, Naomi, no cussing at all, to this one, and I can't go one sentence without saying 2 cuss words. So I grabbed the script and I was like, okay, this is new, but I always like challenges. That's what this whole thing is about. So, and in the audition, there's one scene where, especially there's a gun scene, and me reading this, I get super excited. And I was like, oh my God, imagine if I get this role, this would be amazing. So they liked my first audition. I got the call back. There were 2 callbacks. I got the call back. And then the second callback was, it was just a couple of other scenes, but then they liked that one. And then it was in person. And that's where I was going to have a director session. And I get to the place and I'm really nervous. And then I walk in with Ava and I let go completely. And usually as or as I picture it, it's really nerve-wracking when you walk in there, especially you think, because I've gone through so many times where I even go up to the director's session and then it just doesn't go anywhere from there. And no, they never tell you why, you know what I mean? So there's so much like excitement, butterflies in your stomach, everything when you walk into that room. And I start speaking with Ava, and she calms you down because she listens and then she gives you your feedback. And I feel like that's the most important part when you're dealing with an older figure or a director, a writer, producer. When they listen to you and then you receive their feedback, even if it's saying, okay, your opinion may not fit into what we're doing here right now, or we can use it later. It's always so nice to have them listen to you, because it kind of, I don't know how to, not venting out in a negative way, but you kind of take out what you're feeling in the moment, and you always want to have that communication when you're working on set or in auditions, anything. So it was a really comfortable conversation that I have with Ava, and she really loved that I was actually born and raised in New York, which was perfect for DMZ. And this has never happened before. And she goes, okay, you got the job. And I've never been told on spot that I got the job. And I was like, so happy I could cry. And then I went out to tell my mom, and she was like, oh my God, are you serious? And I was like, yeah, okay, we're flying out. And we started filming DMZ around February 2020. And I had my hair dyed. I had like a bunch of blonde highlights. And for the audition, callback, and director session, I had brown contact lenses, because when they usually ask for Hispanic roles, it usually opens up my variation when I use, contacts. And then we flew out, and the first episode with Ava was amazing. All this was so new to me because we have never traveled that far, and with such a big production, I was so excited. And the sets were amazing, as even shown on DMZ. Those sets look so real, like they did on the TV show. It was amazing. And the quarantine hit, and we all went back home, and we were thinking, okay, hopefully, they keep this alive. We don't want it to get shut down. It has such great potential. And then a year later, they called us back around, what was it, like May 25th of last year, 2020, somewhere around there. And I had cut my hair short, and I had gone back to my natural hair. So kudos to the makeup team, because from episode 1 to episode 2, that's like a year and a half of difference. And I had even gained weight during quarantine, and to get back in shape, I hit the gym before July. And like I said, makeup team did an amazing job. They dyed my hair again. And from episodes 2 to 4, I had extensions on. It was amazing. They did a really good job. And we went back in. We were so excited that this thing, this amazing project hadn't been shut down, and we were given like hope for it. So we made the best of it, and it clearly shows. I think that DMZ came out beautifully. And the actors that I worked with alongside were so amazing. They're so great in what they do. And Jordan was a pleasure to work with. He was, especially in this type of set, there's not a really young act. There's not a lot of young actors. So I worked alongside Jordan, and most of our scenes are together. So I bonded a lot with him. And for episodes 2 to 4 was Ernest, and he has a great eye. Like sometimes you don't even know what he's doing, but then you get this whole project done, and he gets all the angles. He doesn't let any scene slip out, any take. He captures it all.
Well, I think one thing that's really cool is that many actors, in their 20s, their 30s, their 40s, are trying to get their big break. And yours was at 7 years old. So by the time you made it to DMZ, are you already pretty much an established actor? In other words, your style of acting, how you approach a job, has that already been kind of cemented, or are you still kind of growing and learning your craft along the way?
I think I have a lot to learn still, because being an actress and a young actress, I think that once you hit a certain age in your teenage years, you're open to certain things. But I personally want to get to work in every single genre of movie. I want to get to work in everything. But personally, my favorite is drama. And what was I going to say? Could you repeat the question one more time?
Sure. So a question I have is in regards to acting. Once again, you basically started your career at 7, and you're 14, 15 now. I can't remember your age.
Right.
Have you already kind of cemented your approach to acting and your style, or are you still kind of learning the craft?
Okay, great. It came back. So I think that this is just the beginning, actually. Even though I started at such a young age, I've always seen myself to never stopping and eventually switching over to the other side of movies, like directing, producing, writing. I've always had a love for art. I love drawing, and I'm very creative when it comes to writing and expressing myself. So I think eventually I'll switch over to that. One of my inspirations when it comes to the being an actor, but also being on the other side of the camera is Emily Blunt. I love her work and I love the way she moves herself around. And I saw in one of the questions, when I was little, who inspired me. And when I was like 7 or 8 years old, when I actually hit Exposed, I've always wanted to be, on Disney Channel, things like that. But I was honored to work in something like Exposed. So I guess that kind of shifted myself towards that side and not so much Disney or like Nickelodeon. But like I said before, it was so eye-opening at such a young age. And I feel like since that time, I've really matured when it comes to auditions, and I can kind of read what they want. And so answering your question, no, I don't think I've established my thing. I think I'm going to keep growing a lot more to eventually hit the other side and come back.
So what has been the key to you being so successful already at such a young age as an actor? Once again, like I said, many adults are still struggling, like the 20s, 30s, 40s. You've hit it already in your teens and younger. Why have you been successful where older and other actors haven't been able to?
I think honestly, it's mostly not letting the rejection get to you. It's just to keep going, just stay motivated. It's self-motivating, honestly. You can only depend so much on other people and what they say, that you should just listen to yourself when it comes to, okay, like crap, I didn't get this audition. We got to keep going. Because there was a time, I think I was in 6th grade or something, and I would miss these things like Kids' Choice Awards that my friends would go to, or like birthday parties, and I'd have to miss out to do auditions that I wouldn't even get the role for, or I'd make it to the final cut, and then you see on TV that, completely different ethnicity or completely different age ranges. So it can be tiring and stressful. And during that time, I felt like I was going to give up, like, Mom and Dad, I'm not getting any jobs. I think I should just stop now, maybe find another career path. But I stuck with it. And there was a long period of time where I didn't get any auditions at all. And then they started slowly sprouting back up again. And I feel like it honestly depends on your self-hunger for things, the way you see it. It's all about your mindset. If you think, okay, this is going to be like the last audition, I'm not going to get it, your mind is already set negatively on the whole audition. So I feel like just keep doing what you love. If this is truly what you want, you'll push through. Even with all the no's, with all the yeses, you will push through.
Is your fire for acting increasing the more successful you're becoming? And you think there's any gonna be a point where you're just like jaded, like, it's one of those roles, I'm not gonna do that, I'm too big for, what I'm saying? Like, can you see yourself at that point where you're just like, I don't need a role like that, I'm too big for that kind of stuff?
There has been a couple auditions actually, where I have thought that to myself, but I always bring myself to saying, okay, but if I miss this, and then the girl who does this does it a certain way that she gets another role which blows her up, I feel like what doesn't let me think like that is the possibilities that it could come from. So I wouldn't set myself yet to, I'm too big for this, or I'm too famous for this role, because of what it could bring. I feel like there's always possibilities to fill up your resume. Like you can never not. But there have been some roles where I was like, okay, maybe this one isn't really for me, or I don't see myself on TV liking myself as this person. But then you always have to go back that this job is to be not you. It's to be anything but you. It's to completely take Venus out and become Nico or become Naomi completely. You want to act like her 24/7, sleep like her, eat, talk like her. Well, with Nico, you got to be careful with that one.
But well, you've been in, like we talked about a little bit, mentioned the movie Exposed with Keanu Reeves, and obviously there's so many actors and fans out there who would have killed anyone to get in a movie with Keanu Reeves, and you've already pulled it off. So, well, can you go a little bit? What was that experience like working with Keanu Reeves? What did you learn when you work with actors like Keanu Reeves, who obviously have already not only become successful but transcended success into basically being star, superstar? What could you learn from him as an actor, and what was that experience like working with him?
So there's actually a funny story behind how I met Keanu Reeves, because we were in this like waiting room or somewhere, just I think it was like a chemistry read, I'm not sure, but I was actually so okay, let me restart. When I was little, the only way I knew Keanu Reeves was from Matrix. So I pictured, Keanu Reeves, no beard at all, short hair, Neo. So when I was first talking to him, because I didn't even realize it was him, he had a full-grown beard, his hair was like up to here, and I was little, so all I wanted to do was play. And we were like playing with this little rock, I remember. And then I went back home and I told my mom, I was like, yeah, there's this nice man. I was playing with the rock. He was hiding it, whatever. And then my mom was like, what man? And then I pointed to a picture and he's like, that's Keanu Reeves. You were playing, you were hanging out with Keanu Reeves. And I was like, there's no way. Like, oh my God. And when I was little, I loved The Matrix. I thought it was so cool, like how it's just so mind bending.
Yeah.
So that's how I admired him. But honestly, the things that I learned, and not so much of him telling me, but just me observing it firsthand, he's so down to earth and he's so humble in what he does. And he does it so well. And working with him, I only had like 2 scenes with him where I was actually in the same room, but there were days where I would come backstage and just like see the things. And he's amazing. He's truly amazing. Like he leaves you speechless, because you don't expect someone to be so humbled, so down to earth, so kind, yet at the level that he's at. No social media or anything, but he's so humble that he asked my mom. He had a couple of lines in Spanish. He asked my mom how to say them, and you can imagine how my mom was. Like any other person, she was like, Keanu Reeves asked me for advice. Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's so kind.
So a lot of people recognize Keanu Reeves as, they usually say like he's like the nice guy in Hollywood. So that's not BS. He actually is the nicest guy in Hollywood.
He honestly, I feel like he is. He is the nicest guy in Hollywood. He's so selfless in what he does. He always thinks of other people. And I wish I was older when I had met him, because as I'm growing up, I'm as surprised as you were. Like, wow, 7-year-old me got to be in the same room as someone as big as him. And he doesn't even act like that. He's not self-centered. He's not egoistic at all. Like, it's amazing how much positive energy he radiates because usually you think as celebrities grow and grow, they adapt this thick skin or this knowingness of all. And it's the complete opposite with him. And like I said, I wish I was older when I had met him so I could have appreciated it more, I guess. But it was very nice working with him.
So when you watch him approach his role in performance, I'm not talking about like on camera, but the minutes, maybe even a half hour leading into a scene, are you able to watch what they do and not only see what works, but think to yourself, this is what you're doing as well?
Actually, in Exposed, Ana de Armas and Keanu Reeves, they would practice their scenes. They would just, their tiny script, they would look at it and just practice it with each other. But there are times where even both of them, they would completely separate themselves from everything. They just take a deep breath or, just go aside for a while and then practice their scripts on their own. And in fact, there was one scene I remember where Ana de Armas had to do a very dramatic scene. And she even asked the director and the crew to like wait a couple minutes because she needed to prepare herself, mentalize herself for what was coming. And Keanu did the same. He took a couple minutes aside. He focused extra, I remember. And, he gave it his all during the scene. And I feel like you see that a lot in New York as well, now that I'm thinking about it, because I would take the subway a lot to auditions. which was super fun as well when I was little. And you would just see on the train a bunch of people, because New York is kind of where it all starts, Manhattan. You have all this clutterness of people with their scripts in their hands. And on the train, you would just see people with the scripts, and they're just like, no, okay. And they would go again and again. And you would just see that I grew up around everything like that.
Well, like I said, you must have learned a lot. Like I said, you are now playing Nico on DMZ, which is on HBO Max.
HBOMax, yes.
HBO Max, which is, once again, a really fun show. When you got the role of Nico, what were you told about the character that helped you perform it?
So we had a session with Ava and Jordan about both of our characters before we started filming. And when Ava talked about Nico with me, she said, Nico is badass. The DMZ occurred 8 years before, before the flashbacks. So 8 years after. And so I'm about 12, 13 years old as Nico. And so I kind of grew up in DMZ. 4 years old, 3 years old. I kind of grew up there. So DMZ is all I know. I know what the safe places are, what the unsafe places are, what to do, what not to do, how to look suspicious, how to not. I feel like she has her way around it. And me and Ava, we kind of specialize. We specifically talked about how she's a lone wolf, but her only soft spot is Odie. Because and when I get a script that doesn't really have that much background sense on it, on my character, I like to daze off, So I imagine that Nico has a couple brothers that I mentioned, I think in episode 3. I think I have a brother that does not treat me like a dad would. So my dad figure's obviously not there. So she's kind of lived her life on the streets, scavenging, and eventually, meeting Odie. So she's cool. She has her ways. She knows how to defend him. Like I said, Odie's her soft spot, her only best friend. So they care for each other a lot. They're all they have.
So as our viewers would know too, it's based on a very successful comic book by, I believe, Brian Wood. It was a Vertigo comic book. Did you read the comic book to get an idea of some of this background information on the DMZ itself, or had you already familiar with the DMZ comic book prior to the role?
Actually, when I received DMZ and I realized that it was DC, that's when we started doing more of our research. I've never really been into comics, but this has definitely opened up that door to interest myself in. I recently started reading the Harley Quinn comics because I really like her. I love her character. I love how spiky she is. And that's one of the things I was going to say before. I feel like her and Nico kind of have this sort of thing that they both carry. Carly has her bat, Nico has her gun. They're both lone wolf. They both have one friend, Ivy, Odie. But I did do some my research for DMZ, and this is a photographer who gets dropped in here and he sees everything, how ugly everything is. He gets stuck, meets a couple of the people in there, realizes that there's actually humanity in such a closed off space. So, yeah.
Well, like I said, it's a fantastic done show, and it's a very interesting show because it's very kind of dark in a way that it's violent, language, violence, a lot of that. But at the heart, a lot of the main characters have that really good heart. And Nico, who does seem tough, I imagine also has that vulnerability as well. So when you're playing her, are you kind of anticipating this vulnerability, or that you'll explore that vulnerability more as this, hopefully, season 2 and whatever continues?
Hopefully there will be a season 2. I'm hoping there is, because you can honestly bloom from anywhere. You can go from Alma's story, you can go from Parko's, you can see what Skell's doing back in the Free States, you can see what we're doing, you can see where Nico originates from, because Nico's Hispanic, but we never really got into touch with her Latina roles, which I would love to, to start on that if we could. But it is a heavy show. It is a dark show. You can see, I feel like there's always a second meaning behind these types of shows, which makes them even more interesting because it makes your brain work. It makes you wonder what they actually mean. But DMZ is a closed off space, and people from the free states look into this place like, look at those savages, look at those cannibals. You know, they fear this place. But what they don't know is that there's actual people. We are still people living in this place. And we are short on food. We are short on clothes. You can see me and Odie, we wear whatever, you know, we wear whatever we can find. We're always like trying to find whatever we can. And water is really short. You know, you can actually see that when
Una, yep.
Uma, yeah, when Una comes up and she's debating whether or not she's fighting for this debate, saying, I'm actually the one who dominates all you guys. You know, if I wanted to, I would cut you short, like she says. So there's obviously lots of conflict in here because of the shortage of things. And I think that Rosario comes in here to find her son initially, but then she opens her eyes and sees that there's much, you know, there's much more in depth than just finding her son, who's obviously grown and has a personality of his own. So she sees all these conflicts, and I feel like we're seeing it from her point of view when we're watching DMZ. We see kids, and when she looks at the kids in that one scene, she sees that these kids are stuck here. They don't have anything to look up to. They just have what time not to go out at night type of mentality. They don't know what they're going to do tomorrow. They just need to stay alive for the day. And Odie mentions in one of his scenes with his grandfather that we could die a million ways a day, because it's true. And it's so sad that an 8-year-old like Odie has to think about these things. So I feel like that's where the heaviness comes from, like the life or death situation. And then eventually in every single circumstance like that, it's like little cliques. You have the Hispanics, you have African Americans, you have the Asians. So they all start to rise, and it's like more in depth when it comes to the conflict. So the conflict is there. The external conflict is that they're separated, but then the internal conflict is these little revolutions that are happening inside this little place. So,
well, I mean, I think what you said was very interesting was the idea that there's a lot of underpinnings to this show, and a show like this is definitely full of social commentary. I mean, just by the fact that you have society kind of broken down to this cut off little area where people have to kind of reestablish not only the kind of government they want, but who they want to be, culture clashing, things of that nature. When you're, once again, in the show, how aware are you, and how much of discussion with you has there been on what some of the social commentary of the show is?
I think that the show, when it comes to that, it really portrays what is happening in the real world, because it's true. It's like that even in my high school. That's how divided it is. You have all the Latinos in one corner, and then you have all the African Americans in one corner, and they're all, you know, and they're not even aware that this is happening. You know, it's just natural. Like they just go with who they feel more comfortable with. And I feel like DMZ is showing that, but with a reign type of more. So they're all fighting for power, and they're all saying, okay, but we have the food, but we have the water, but I'm the smartest. No, he's the clown, you know? And when it comes to the debates, I feel like there's irony behind that, because you have Wilson fighting and you have Parko fighting, and a regular debate would state facts, you know, but then they start to fool around and they start to get a little personal, and they're like, okay, you're the clown. No, you want to trust Parko, blah, blah, blah. So I feel like it starts to get personal, and it's always between two higher powers, which is Wilson and Parko in this matter.
You know, I kind of like that you compared it to school. What I was thinking about was kind of the stereotype for a prison, where prison also divides itself over race, whatever. When you get those in prison, you immediately find the group that's more like you, and that's the group you stay with, because there's just safety in being within that group. And I kind of feel like DMZ, I guess, is just a large prison without, you know, that's not necessarily barred between groups, but barred between stuck being inside and the trap of not being allowed back out. So, I mean, it's a fascinating show to kind of go dive into and kind of observe how this all would play out. as someone who once again is a younger actress on the show, and once again there's a lot going on, and once again you're with Rosario, Dawson, Benjamin Bratt, the director Ava DuVernay, once again very famous director. How comfortable do you feel voicing your thoughts, your opinions, your input on a set where these very much more experienced individuals, adults, are doing their thing? Like, do you feel, and do they listen to what you're saying? You know, I feel this is more like my character, or I see this is something that would make more sense, things of that nature.
I've actually fortunately been able to work with some very understanding and very open-minded directors. So I've never had an issue with that actually, but there was one time where the director wouldn't really listen. And it's very frustrating, especially since you already feel like you're going out of your way as such a young person, you know, standing up to someone and you're like, hey, maybe, you know, this would look better like that. You're already, you know, bringing all your might just to refer to them and
Right.
change something or suggest something. So when they don't listen, it's like, okay, you know, okay, I'll just stick to what you want. But with Ava, Ernest, and all my past, my firsthand directors, they've always been really understanding. And like I think I mentioned before, even if what I say doesn't fit into what we're currently doing, or maybe it gets used somewhere else, it's always nice to receive feedback. It's always nice because that's how a conversation works. And when you're working on set, whether it's with Rosario or Benjamin, the chemistry is there. The communication skills are always there. I actually had a talk with Rosario in depth, and we started talking about how I wanted to grow up in the industry. And she asked me, like, do you love your job? Do you truly love your job? And I said, yes, I do. I see myself growing up in this. I see myself growing in the industry. And she was just giving me her word of advice, how you should never be shy and you should always give it your all. Rosario has worked in Men in Black, 7 Pounds. She has a variety of things. I personally loved her in 7 Pounds. I thought that was such a great movie. And when I started working with her, I always looked up to her. I saw her scenes when I would go backstage, because I also asked to do that with DMZ. I would see her work, and she's also very open-minded. She also gives her suggestions. And when you have that comfortableness, you can also talk with your peers. So I'll be speaking to Rosario when I have a scene to her, and I'll say, okay, I want to add a couple more faces or a couple more expressions here. Can you give me like 2 more seconds before you walk in? And then she'll be like, yeah, sure. Or even with Odie, me and him work together as a team to make our scenes the best they can be. Sometimes we'll have these scenes where they'll look kind of empty at first. There's not that much contact between me and him. And then we'll say, okay, you want to have like a little handshake here, or let's look at each other and smile here, and then get back to throwing the papers. And at the end of the day, you see the final product and it looks super natural, and it just fills in those gaps that you never thought were there.
I mean, like I said, it's such a well done thing, and I think you're doing a fantastic job in it. When that one scene you did mention, and I think it's worth going into a little detail with, is the scene with the gun, which is very intense, very heavy moment for you as an actress, and I think almost for everyone in that scene. I mean, it's a very intense scene. How difficult is it to be in moments like that, get there mentally, and also, I guess, forget about it for the rest of your day and and let that weight go? Is that easy to do, hard to do?
Can you specify which gun scene?
But there's I'm trying to remember the exact the names, but there's the group of boys come over to you.
Oh, okay.
And then you stick the gun in the kid's face, and you know the friends run off. The kid starts basically almost like peeing himself. So that scene.
Okay, so the scene where I shoot at the ceiling to scare off the kids,
Yeah.
I was actually stoked to do that. I was so excited to do that. I just wanted to see how it works, because I've always seen these action movies as a little kid or growing up, and I've always wondered, oh, okay, like, are these actually ketchup packets? You know, what are they doing? So to work with an airsoft gun and to shoot a blank was so exciting to me. And we actually got to practice it a few times. And I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like, this is amazing. Like the kids on Or the one movie came to mind, Bad Boys, for example, or Lethal Weapon. They must have so much fun, doing all these stunts, or, you know, falling right where the stunt person fell, to say that. But I had a lot of fun doing it. They pulled me aside, they explained to me, they made sure that me and my mom knew that it was all safe. And I had to work on my positioning, my posture, just to make it all look good. And they did it really nicely. I think it came out really clean. The scene was really well put really well. But it didn't that one scene, even though it brought a lot out, like just power, because you want to get into the scene. I like to think that I'm actually living there. I'm about to get jumped. I have this gun. I'm going to scare them away. I like to have that mentality, because I feel like that's how scenes work the best. When you actually put yourself into the character. I have to protect Odie, I have no parents. I have to protect Odie. But comparing that to the other scene with Marcel and the group of guys, that one was scary. There was no need to focus to become Nico. That one was scary. But it was a fun kind of scary, because it was a challenge. I was trying not to okay, you guys aren't actually mad at me, right? But me and Odie, we looked at each other, and as soon as they would say cut, even Marcel, he would say, okay, are you guys okay? Is this okay? And I was like, yeah, no problem. But those reactions were real. The gun, and I would purposely not make myself not expect it. I don't know how to explain that, but I would think that I would be hiding, actually, and then these guys would come up out of nowhere. So in somewhat, you could say that it actually affected me, because once you see it all happen there, you have 5 guys pointing a gun at you, whether it's airsoft loaded or not. It's scary. And then the scene with Parko, where I'm standing up to him, which is further in that episode, that one was also a challenge as well. Parko's intimidating. Benjamin is intimidating, especially as Parko, all leather. That is scary. So I stand up to him, and Nico, I feel like I put it in there well, so you can read what she's feeling, and she does not want to let her guard down, but she also does not want to get shot. So you can see her going up to Parko, a guy who's 2 times her height, and trying to put him in his place, because I do not want my friend to get hurt. He's obviously involving Odie in something that I'm not aware of yet, but I know that it's dangerous. I have the group of guys with guns behind me. I have his 2 henchmen, and Parko. Parko's scary as it is. So you obviously know that he's up to no good. Nico is not that familiar with Parko, but she has seen him in his dictatorship, in his debate, his parties. I know where he stands. I know the type of person he is, even though I don't know him personally. Especially when Z comes up to us. We have met Z before at me meeting Parko. I know that there's a conflict between them, and me and Odie will definitely side between Z instead of Parko. But that scene was heavy.
So what can our listeners look forward to in future episodes of DMZ? Hopefully maybe a season 2, if you heard anything about that. So what can you tease for our listeners?
I have not heard anything, but I'm hoping as much as you guys that there will be a season 2. I would love to see where or which character will unfold in whatever way. I am super excited. I have seen some reviews that people really like it. They like what we've done. So hopefully it goes up.
Well, Miss Ariel, it was a great pleasure to talk with you. Like you said, you're doing a great job with DMZ, and hopefully you continue it. Thank you so much. And like I said, when season 2 is ready, come back on the show and talk about that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. You too.